to the Metapod podcast, the Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta, revolving around Baltimore, revolving around Singapore, and revolving around, we've talked about this on the podcast before, Bilbao?
No.
I
think it's Bilbao, but I don't know.
Bilbao.
It's definitely not Bilbao.
It's a European place that had a event, a regional, right? I believe.
Yeah, it had a regional.
No, it special event. It was a special event. Special event. Big time stuff. A lot of big time results. We're going to be talking about the final event of the not Lost Origin, Astral Radiance format before we move into Lost Origin. And then we're going to take a peek into a little bit of the Lost Origin decks that were showcased, along with some things that Pokemon may need to think about in the very, very near future. But Sean, before we get into anywhere, how's your day today?
Day was lovely, Jake. Day was lovely.
Your day was lovely.
I ordered, I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast last week. I don't think I did. I ordered some cards to build a deck.
Pokemon deck?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I ordered a few amazing Reshurams and a Radiant Charizard. Because I think come Lost Origin, man, Mirage Gate, amazing Reshiram, right? Radiant that deck. I'm like, a single prize deck that can do 270 reliably. Yeah, sign me up. I'm down.
I think the cool thing about like the Mirage Gate and stuff, I think, because we've seen some people play in Lost Origin stuff on like streams and stuff, and I think the amazing rare decks are really, really cool.
Yeah.
Because the hardest part about them was getting those energy requirements of like, 3 different types of colored energies, and so with Mirage Gate, that makes it really, really easy to accelerate those if you've got the cards in the Lost Zone. So I think it's really, really sweet.
Yeah, I think that could be really good. I don't know. I feel like it's worth people trying out the Evoltol amazing rare. I think one that
just says like your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out. Just dead. Get out of here.
I think it cost like 5 energy. It was like 3 different colors and then 2 colorless. And like we have double turbo and twin energy in the format. So like there you go. We have, I don't know if one of them is fire though. It may not, I can't remember if it was fire, so I don't know if Magma Basin would work. But that's always the question mark. You gonna look it up real quick?
I'm pretty sure the Evoltol,
I think it was darkness.
fire.
I think it might have been darkness, maybe lightning fire. I don't know though. It could be.
It's called a Magma Basin, but
yeah.
Sean,
anyways, but yeah, that's what I'm gonna build.
That is neither here nor there. It is a bench fire Pokemon though, so it's not gonna work anyways.
Sag.
And we'll talk about what Magma Basin does work with later in this podcast, but first we need to talk about the upcoming events that we're going to be talking about today and that people played in. We got to talk about the qualification standards. How many points you need to go to Worlds.
First, Jake, we need a 5-star. Do we have one?
Okay.
Do we have? I caught you out.
We do, and so Sean, seeing me mess around on my phone, realized what I was doing, but I started going into it and I didn't back down. We got a 5-star review to talk about today, and we're going to talk about a short and sweet one from Dancing Weasel 22.
I like the name.
5 stars. Amazing is the title. This is one of the best Pokemon TCG podcasts around. Boom. Done. Squared away. Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
I love it. Thank you, Dancing Weasel.
Thank you. And let us know how we're doing as well in the reviews and whatnot. But anyways, going back to the 2023 World Championship qualifications, you can qualify for Worlds and you can officially know how many points you need to qualify, what age division you're in, what region you're in as well. Because Pokemon released that information, I believe it was like middle of last week or something. Yep. Probably like right after we released the podcast, as they usually do.
Yeah.
And so again, Pokemon World Championships in 2023 are in Yokohama, Japan. A lot of people are excited about that because, Japan, that's where the house of Pokemon is. That's where it all is, per se, and where it all started. And so A lot of people really, really excited about that, especially the first time the championships are going to be in Japan. And if you're in the U.S. and Canada, which I believe is the majority of our audiences, Sean, can you read me what it's going to take for me to qualify as a competitor for the World Championships?
I think it's the same as it's always been. It is
at least last year.
Yeah, it's 350 CP championship points if you're a junior, 400 if you're a senior, and 500 points if you are a Masters player, which means you are, I think, 17 or older, basically, maybe 18. But
I think it might be 17. I think it might be 16.
Oh, okay.
Is it 16?
Anyways, you'll know if you're a Masters, senior, or junior based on your birthday. You could look
Ask
that
your
up.
local judge.
And then the qualifiers go down basically a certain amount. I think it's basically 150 to 100 points down for Europe. And then Latin America, it's just a flat 250 across the board, regardless of your, level. And then the other region, which I don't think they ever had this region before, Jake, Middle East and South Africa is a separate region now. I don't.
I'm not 100% sure on that, to be honest.
Okay, because I've always remembered there being 4 regions, but I didn't know.
I don't really believe that there are events in those regions. But that's also why, juniors 150 points, seniors 150, masters 250. The threshold is so low.
Yeah.
Compared to other places because I don't think there's an event over there like a regional or an SPE or something like that. And there's probably way less locals, in terms of cups and challenges, if those eventually come back.
Yep.
Because we talked about in a previous podcast how at least in the first half of the season they weren't going to be around, but possibly in 2023. So, yeah. Sean, how do you feel about these?
This is the simplest thing for Pokemon to do is just say we're not going to change the qualification thresholds. Just keep them the same and move on, right? I know a lot of people, and myself included, were a little bit upset that there was not some consolation made for the fact that there are no cups or challenges until 2023. So the first half of the season, basically, the only way to earn points are through regionals. And as anybody that plays
regionals, SPs, ICs,
big events,
big major events, that are streamed on the Pokemon channel.
Yes. And so the problem with that is obviously those are very expensive to go to. And the points that you get if you do really well at these events, which is usually top 128, gets a decent chunk of points. And by that, it's usually 40 points. So if you get top 128 or so, I think you can get the same number of points or near it, less 10 of winning a League Cup, which is big, right?
Yeah.
But that's the only things that you're going to get points for the entire half of the season. And they're very expensive to go to. So this does start to feel like it gets into the territory of basically the more money you have, the more likely you are to qualify. Now, that's always been the case. Let's be frank, because it takes money to go to events, to buy decks, whatever. But I do wish they would have made some acknowledgement, even if it's 100 points. I don't think it needs to be a ton of point difference, right? But some amount of points would be kind.
I will say that I have no problems with this whatsoever. I'll just be flat out honest. So for anyone who doesn't know, I was in swimming and diving. I competed as a college student athlete or whatever. The time is the time, in your race. For big meets like the state championships, the regional championships, as you can call them, the national championships, the Olympic trials, to qualify for those meets, you had to have a certain time in the event that you're trying to compete in. And pretty much every year, most of the times in all the events, all 20 some events that you can swim, pretty much every year those times get faster, right? To qualify, because people are naturally getting faster. People are naturally getting better. And so you kind of have to, if you don't go up, you're going to have too many people. And I don't know the amount of people at Worlds, right? I don't know if, the amount of people at Worlds was the most in X amount of time or whatever. But I would venture to say that Pokemon, with the knowledge they have, right, they keep track of probably all the points that everybody gets, whether, you're Sean and I that don't have enough points to qualify for Worlds, or if you're Azul GG, Azul Garcia Griego, who probably has way more points than he needs to qualify for Worlds or something like that. So I have no problem with it. The best players in the world will qualify for Worlds. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks that there's no locals, right? I wish that the first half of the year that there were locals. But I think what Pokemon is doing is they're doing that same concept as I saw in swimming, where they're just making the standards a little bit higher to ensure that, there's not too many people at events or something. And you can make the argument of like, Jake, why would you gatekeep people there? I mean, it's
already gatekept. It's Worlds.
Yeah, like it's World Championships. Like it is. And truthfully, I think Azul was saying this, in like a stream or something in tweets. Like, if it's good to have goals and it's good to have your goal be to qualify for the World Championships. That's an exciting thing, right? That's a great thing, a goal to achieve and to strive for. But there are tons of people that qualify for Worlds. Like the people who want to win Worlds, because you should always want to win Worlds, right? But like, I don't want to demoralize it, but like, I don't know, like in swimming and diving, when I saw the national cut, right, for an event get farther away, I wasn't like, darn USA Swimming for gatekeeping me. I was like, no, I just got to get better, right? Like I got to get faster to try to qualify. And it's not like it's impossible. It's a little bit harder, but I don't know. I can understand people's outrage, but like, as someone who's been in a timed-based, like, gate-kept system of qualifying for events, like, this is the norm.
Yeah, I mean, look, that makes sense, right? Because your speculation is that there are more players seeking a Worlds invite this year than ever before. And I would
say that out of the people that were like going through into the Worlds, like, because there's bunches of players, but probably the percentage of people that are going to events and stuff, there's probably a higher percentage of people that are going to events that are qualifying for Worlds. That doesn't mean attending. That doesn't mean
but what I was gonna say is, like, I think
necessarily more like 500 versus 600, but like just a higher percentage of people.
Yeah, but I mean, overall, I think the point that you're making is, like, if there are more people that might qualify in order to keep Worlds at a reasonable number and not make it something that anybody can achieve or that too many people achieve, you need to raise the threshold, raise the bar, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's some evidence that might be the case, because this regional, the one in Baltimore, which we'll talk about in a second, technically was the largest ever North American regional in modern history, like modern of the game. Now, the international championship was bigger, NAIC, but not by many people. So,
but and I mean, that's an international championship. It's bigger.
Exactly.
There's more points on the line. Like, there's more bigger prizes, money, things like that. So,
and that's all to say. And these are also these events are also reaching capacity, meaning that if they could open it up to more people would have likely attended. So there is definitely.
I mean, we make the jokes on Twitter. Is like, did you sign up for the regional or did you blink? Right?
Yeah.
Like.
So I do think there is something to that. We'll see once locals come back. I think this will be an interesting year to see, do regional capacities settle down in terms of like how quickly they sell out once people have other options to gain points. And but I think that your theory there is might very well be spot on, of like, while it's frustrating that it will just be more expensive and more difficult to get 500 points this year than ever before, it may be a necessary situation to keep Worlds something that is an aspirational goal.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's a natural progression of a system similar, a system like this.
But Jake, are you ready to talk about the largest regional in modern history?
I am ready to talk about the Baltimore Regionals. 1,091 players in the Sword and Shield to Astral Radiance format. The hoorah to Astral Radiance was this past weekend. And you know what? The future is bright in the Pokemon trading card game. You may have seen us tweet about that on the Metapod.
Jake, the future is radiant.
The future is radiant indeed, because Radiant Charizard was the winning deck. Inteleon and Radiant Charizard, piloted by Piper Lapine. Congratulations to Piper. It was a very, very crazy, exciting run. I know Piper has been on this deck and playing this deck for a while now, and even was on the Lake of Rage podcast last week, hyping up this deck. And you know what? I mean, I was making fun of Mello for going like 0-3 drop at locals with this deck and stuff, and you know, all credit to everybody who believed in the deck. You know, it's crazy how cool it was to watch. And if you haven't seen this deck, this is with the Inteleon Shady Dealings engine, or Inteleon, I think is the correct pronunciation, I realized this weekend. With Radiant Charizard. Radiant Charizard, if you do not know, is a new basic Pokemon from the Pokemon Go set. Has the ability Excited Heart. The attack on Radiant Charizard costs 1 colorless less for each prize card your opponent has taken. The attack is 1 fire, 4 colorless energies for 250 damage. During your next turn, this Pokemon can't use Combustion Blast, which is pretty fine because your Charizard's going to get knocked out every single turn it attacks more than likely anyways. And so when you have things like Raihan, Magma Basin, Twin Energy, you can realistically get 4 energies on that Pokemon in a single turn, especially with the Twin Energies, to do the 250 damage. So that means your opponent only needs to take 1 prize before you can start dealing the deafening blow of Charizard. And some great setup options. Sean, the Mysterious Tail Mew. Love this Mew. Think you like this Mew as well from Celebrations. Using that as your engine of draw, or to get things going for your items, whether that is the level balls for Drizzile, whether that is the evolution incense to find, you know, Drizziles and Inteleon, things like that. Any of those items that you see on the screen in the list. Cross switchers as well. This is playing 4 cross switchers. So very, very good. This deck also playing 4 Irida. Sean.
Because you can go get an item card, right? And then you can also go get one of your Inteleon engine pieces to go get a second item.
Manaphy.
Or Manaphy if you need, right? Like, because
Manaphy is a water Pokemon.
It is, and it's very important because, like, if you happen to run up against a Jolteon deck, you know, any kind of nasty spread deck,
or like a Reggie deck, you know, Reggie with the spread, any Radiant Greninja, right, with the Moonlight Shuriken attack to do 90 to 2 Pokemon anywhere.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so like this is you know, Manaphy very important in certain matchups because you're going to have lots of little guys on the bench, and the whole point of this deck is to make the prize math awkward for your opponent, right? Like, you're going to be taking a couple of prizes at a time, and they're grinding out one at a time. So you've also got one Zigzagoon.
Yes, to help fix the math, because there's a couple situations where, you know, you may need 1 more damage counter, right? For instance, I saw Piper use very often Aqua Bullet. Piper expressed that, you know, they use Aqua Bullet a lot in the tournament throughout all the rounds. What was it, like 17, 18 rounds played in total, I think, is it? It's like 18 or 19. And so doing Aqua Bullet, doing a 120 to 20 on the bench, right? That little 20 on the bench. If you have a Palkia V-Star that you're attacking, right? 280 hit points on that. Combustion Blast without a choice belt will only get you to 270 total. So that little Zigzagoon can help you with the extra ping to help knock you out. Also, if you're facing Regis, because Regis is a cheap and popular deck in the Pokemon trading card game, a lot of those suckers have 130. Aqua Bullet can help get you there to start taking one-hit KOs on the active.
Yeah. And, I mean, the nice thing about that is, like, you've also got, in terms of, like, recycling the Inteleons, you've got the Ordinary Rod, you've got Clara, you know, also Clara and Ordinary Rod, good for getting back your Radiant Charizard. So you really have the resources here to take your time, do setup damage if you need, because did you watch the final round?
I did watch the finals.
Same.
Yes, I was able to tune in, just finished up work on Sunday and tuned in literally right before they started the finals.
Yeah, it was amazing, how fast Piper was able to pilot this deck in that matchup. Mm-hmm. And also, it was actually good to see it against a VMAX deck, because the math on Radiant Charizard, most V-Stars are going to cap out at 280 HP. So really,
without any modifiers or anything like that.
So all you really need is Radiant Charizard and a Choice Belt, and you're basically good to go. But against those VMAX decks, like we were saying, the math doesn't really work quite as well. And it was good to see it against Mew VMAX to be like, okay, so the plan with Mew VMAX is to get set up and then get a couple of pings in with Inteleon on those 3 prizers. And then once you've kind of set up the damage, then you're on easy street, just 2 Charizard attacks for the game.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was very, very cool. And to be honest, like especially because this deck takes a lot of combos. This deck takes a lot of moves and has a lot of pieces that you have to account for. If you are someone that wants to learn, a combo-y deck, complex deck, proper sequencing, rewatch that finals series with Piper. Absolute masterclass in terms of how to play the deck, how to play a complex deck with a lot of decisions to be made every single turn, and how to properly sequence those situations and those moves as well to get you a 2-0 result in the World Championships against a tough deck that we'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah, I mean, overall though, good deck, very cool, and keep your eye out for Radiant Charizard, because I think that you're going to see more of it in Lost Origin format. You might see more Mew in Lost Origin format too, right? Because a lot of Lost Origin decks, they're going to be playing that Mirage Gate, and that's like the key to that engine. So a couple of cards there that you might want to keep an eye on picking up as alternative, kind of like the Mew is like a fun alternative option to the Inteleon engine.
I think my favorite part in this list, though, Sean, is the one of rare candy.
Yeah.
Especially comboed with 4 Irida, some Mysterious Tail Mew. You can very consistently get a turn 2 Inteleon and be able to Aqua Bullet, which is really, really good in my opinion, especially how Piper was setting up math, especially in that last series, could have had bunches. I think it was prized one of the games, but just does wonders with helping you out in terms of getting there. So very, very cool again to see this list, especially with Irida in the forefront, I would say. But Sean, let's talk about what Piper faced in the finals. It is the Old Faithful. A lot of people wrote this deck off after, the World Championships, but the London Open had a style of Mew that everybody got into right away. The London Open featuring Pokestop in the Mew VMAX decks, discarding Meloetta, taking away that big turbo engine, only going with 2 trekking shoes in this list specifically. But using Pokestop, Sean, do you remember what Pokestop does?
I mean, I saw it enough in the regional.
Did you see the meme that we posted?
Yeah, it's basically Pokestop is you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, you keep any item cards, and the rest go to your discard.
Mm-hmm. So it can really help you out, especially, early in the game when you're looking for some battle VIP passes, power tablets, cross switchers, Ultra Ball, Cram-O-Matics, right? Especially if you have a Cram-O-Matic in your hand already, but you need an item card to discard to be able to use the Cram-O-Matic. So this list, featuring the 4-3 line of Mew VMAX, 4 Genesect, obviously, or Choreo as well to help the math on Mew VMAX, make it harder to KO. And this one has an assortment of supporters. Sean, I feel like usually we see a high volume of like bosses orders in this list, and I would say we still do in this list, truthfully.
I mean, you've got 4 cross switchers and 2 boss. So.
Exactly. That's why you got a high volume of bosses orders. But a lot of Mew lists I saw this weekend, some people had 3, some people had 4. Isaac in this list, the person who piloted this list being Isaac Moloski. So shout outs to Isaac. Both Isaac and Piper, like 90% sure, are like new Masters players in terms of like within the last like 2 years or so. I'm pretty sure they're both under the age of 20.
Yeah. Both very
young into the game, which is why I said the future was bright. But playing 2 Averys in this list, Avery being pretty much a staple now in Mew decks, especially this variant of it in the Astral Radiance meta. But as Sean said, for Cross Switcher, for Battle VIP Pass, Quick Ball, Ultra Ball, Cram-O-Matics, you really just need those, right? Those are, especially the balls and the Cram-O-Matics, absolute staples.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly the Pokestops were what made the biggest change to the deck list, because like and yeah, seeing the Oricorio over Meloetta, right, as like the like they basically are saying, I don't think I'm gonna donk anybody, I'm not gonna bother with the Meloetta play, it's fine, we don't need to try this. Playing a little bit slower of a game. I do wonder, like, I guess there must not have been too many players playing the Duraludon match relative to Mew, because I don't know how you get around Duraludon.
I don't really think you do, besides Echoing Horn, which there is an Echoing Horn in this list, so you get a Duraludon on the bench and gust it up with cross switchers or boss.
You Silene for another one.
Yeah, I mean, you could, to be honest, and you've got Palpad in the list as well, so you can effectively use Silene twice if the game comes to that, or well, 3 times total.
Yeah, well, I guess you can use Silene
times.
Yeah, you can use Silene twice, and thus you can get Echoing Horn up to 3 times. But like,
oh yes, that's what I meant. I'm sorry.
Terrifying. That's terrifying odds, though. But I mean, I guess that is the way around it, right?
And I mean, like Arceus Duraludon, there is Arceus in the list, so effectively, you take a knockout on the Arceus, maybe you snipe a Duraludon V as well. Maybe hit a Duraludon V before it turns into a VMAX first, and then get the Arceus, right? Because a lot of those Arceus Duraludons don't play stuff like Sharon's Care, so the Arceus stays on the field, and then you just Echoing Horn one of those Vs, knock it out, game over.
Yeah. But Jake, I think Mew VMAX, personally, I think is pretty solved. I think
it was cool to see this new version with the Pokestops, in my opinion.
I agree. In terms of the other decks that did well, there is a list for Ice Rider, Calyrex, and Palkia that we don't have the list for. So like we won't talk about that, but we can talk about 2 other decks if you want. There's the Reggie deck that got 3rd place. Jake.
I will say there are 3 things that you can be sure of in life: death, taxes, and Drew Kennett in the top 8 of a regional IC whatever. I can't take credit for that joke. I saw it on Twitter, thought it was too good of a joke that I couldn't pass up on. Anyways, the Reggie deck making 3rd place overall in the Baltimore Regional Championships. It's kind of a little bit crazy having a Pokestop as well in it, 3 of them to be exact, along with 2 Path to the Peak. So really trying to win the stadium war in this matchup. I don't know if Drew expected so much like Pokestop Mew, right? But I think in the Mew matchup, you may value Path to the Peak a little bit more when you can. But anyways, this list playing a wide variety of Reggies, 2 Gigas, as always, 3 Alekis, 2 of the Terra Spark, 1 of the targeted Bolt, and then 3 Regidragos as well. 2 of the Dragon Sword, right? The one that draws you extra cards with its ability. And then 1 of the Dragon Energy Regidrago to get that 240, 270 with that choice belt. You've got 2 of the Regice, 2 of the Regirock, but 1, Sean, of the Registeel, which is kind of interesting. Registeel, kind of one that you least use as an attacker, and I think that's the main reason why there's only 1 in the list, because yes, you could, there was in that top 8 the Ice Rider Calyrex, right? But that is not a very popular thing.
No.
That I would say is probably, in terms of the ways to play Origin Form Palkia decks, that is the least popular way to play Origin Form Palkia Inteleon decks. So I think you're okay with getting rid of the Heavy Slam Registeel, the second one, and instead inserting something like an extra Pokestop or an extra Regieleki, Regidrago, things like that. Because with Regice and Blizzard Bind, you know, there may be opponents that only have Pokemon V, aka like, well, not Mew VMAX, like an Arceus Duraludon, right? They can't really get through Blizzard Bind because they're all Pokemon Vs in that deck. And then any Arceus deck, or even Flying Pikachu, VMAX, Regirock coming in with that Giga Impact Slam to just absolutely wipe the table. So,
yep,
you've got answers for a lot of different things. You know, Gigaton Break on Regigigas can knock out with the Choice Belt Mew VMAX, even if it has an Oricorio in play. So a strong attacker if you can get all those twin energies in the discard pile. But very, very cool. Again, wild list. I remember it was so wild in the top 4 match. The first game against Piper, I saw a replay of this. There were just too many things in the prizes. There was, I think, a Regice, the Registeel, but also the Hisuian Heavy Ball in his first 6 prizes. And so when he looked through the deck and he realized, oh, my Registeel's in there. Oh, my Hisuian Heavy Ball is in there.
So you can't even go get it out.
Yeah, it can't even get it out, so you literally can't attack unless you manually power up your Pokemon every single turn, which you're not going to win a game doing that. So he literally, before they even played a single, like, full attack, scooped the game and moved on to the next one. You know, knowing his time, right? Yeah. Very good knowledge of...
2 single prize decks, right? It's going to take you forever.
Yeah. And so you got to just scoop it up and advance and hope you win the next 2, right? Not have such unfortunate prizings, but
yeah,
very awesome to see a Regi deck, in my opinion. I love seeing budget decks like this just do well. It makes me really excited.
No, it's very cool. I mean, yeah, I think the only other deck that I personally want to talk about, and I know, Jake, you also wish they'd put this on stream. Jake and I both, before this pod started, were like, wait, which Morpeko is this? This is Miltank Morpeko.
So I want to talk. I got beef with whoever was choosing the tables at Baltimore Regionals because they never put, at least when I got to watch, you know, I couldn't watch all the rounds, but I'm pretty sure some people had this testament that this Miltank Morpeko deck never made the stream table. And to be fair, I think it is a control deck. So control stall type deck. So I can understand why it never made the stream table, but it is a very unique deck. I can tell you right now, I never thought Miltank Morpeko would be in the top 8 of a regional, especially one of the largest regional in the modern era of the Pokemon TCG North American history. But Sean, we keep saying Morpeko, but I'm pretty sure people probably don't know what the Morpeko is. There's probably a couple Morpekos that they can think of. Sean, what Morpeko are we talking about?
This is probably the Morpeko that you least suspected. It is I told Jake, wait, is it Morpeko V, the one that has like the thing where you attach, you discard an energy?
We're literally looking at the list, and Sean's like, is it Morpeko V? And I'm like, no, Sean.
I wasn't looking at the list. You
not
were.
There.
Anyways, this Morpeko it's got one attack that really matters. That's the only one. The attack that matters is actually the first attack for one colorless energy, which is stupid that attack does anything useful. It's 20 damage, and you choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks, and during your opponent's next turn, that Pokemon can't use that attack. So I would say there have been many formats where this attack is trash, right? Because you would have a lot of people playing switches, escape ropes, Pokemon that have no retreat cost, cross switcher. I mean, we do have decks that play cross switchers, right? But you also in the past had cards like Guzma. You had, escape boards and more air balloons and all of these cards where you were constantly switching in and out of the active, and it was no problem. But when Jake and I actually thought about this, we were like, most decks don't have Pokemon that have no retreat cost. Not zero retreat cost, no retreat cost. And most decks are playing a very minimal count of switching cards, whether that's tools, escape ropes, switches, whatever. So, this strategy is actually kind of genius. How does this strategy work, Jake?
So there's a couple ways to do it. You have a lot of different options in here. One, you have the milk tank. If you do, and I know I'm saying it wrong, just go with it. Just go with it. I've been saying this name for 20 years now at this point. With Milk Tank, it's got that ability, Miracle Body, where all damage done to the Pokemon by attacks from a Pokemon or opponent's Pokemon V, say that 5 times fast, are prevented. So it's basically a wall for most decks in the format. And so you've got that. You've got more Pekko, which we talked about with Torment. A lot of V-Star Pokemon, the V-Max Pokemon, only have one attack. That they use. Flying Pikachu VMAX, I believe, also has only one attack.
Arceus,
that it
one attack.
would use. Yeah, Arceus, one attack. Palkia, one attack. Duraludon, one attack. And even for cards like Charizard, right? Radiant Charizard we talked about earlier. It's only got one attack. Yep. I don't know if the Inteleon, off the top of my head, has more than one attack, but it's only got one attack worth using.
It's only got one attack because the rest of the card text is the ability.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So, one attack. And so you've got all these attackers like that. And, we do have Boss. We do have Guzma. Or we don't have Guzma. We have Escape Rope. We do have Cross Switcher.
And you have Scoop Up
in the format.
For some of those single price decks. But
utilizing a Scoop Up deck or Scoop Up net may not, in the long run, be advantageous to you. But also, with those different Switch cards, they could be bringing up a Milk Tank. And so they can't attack that anyways, unless they do a cross switcher boss play, which is using a lot of resources for one prize card. You also have other options like Yveltal. I don't think I say that Pokemon's name right, but I think we know what we're talking about. I think we know what Pokemon we're talking about. The Yveltal from Celebrations. We talked about this card a bunch before, but it's been a while. The Celebrations, Cry of Destruction for 2 colorless energies. Discard up to 3 special energies from from your opponent's Pokemon. Now, this is anywhere on the field, so any double turbos you see on the field, any twin energies you see on the field, any fusion energies you see on the field, any of those, take those away. 3 of them, up to 3 of them. And with the Ditto, right from the Pokemon Go set that is in here, love this card. It can use the attacks of any basic Pokemon in your discard pile except for Pokemon with a rule box, which, newsflash, every single Pokemon in this deck does not have a rule box. So it can copy any of the Pokemon's attacks in here, especially, if you're having a little bit of trouble getting, the more Pekko back in the field, the Miltank back into the field, because actually, now that I look at this list, there are no Pokemon recovery cards. In here. I mean, there are no ordinary rods or Claras or anything like that. So if you lose your one Regieleki that used the electromagnetic sonar to put a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand, if you lose that early, you can use Ditto to use that attack if you so choose.
And the other thing about this deck, you've got a range of different energies that are all special energies, super useful. But the main other card I think that makes this deck work is Galar Mine. So you have Path to the Peak to turn off abilities, which is useful against maybe the Arceus decks or Palkia decks, whatever it might be, right? But, or against Mew. But you have Galar Mine, which gives all of your opponents, active Pokemon, 2 more colorless to their retreat cost. So it even makes Mew a 2 retreat cost deck, which is huge for that deck.
Because Mew doesn't use escape, or they don't use air balloons.
No.
Right? I mean, the list that we looked at for Mew earlier today, 1 switch card.
Yep.
That's it. 1 switch. Does play cross switchers, but 1 switch. And you know what? You can't use cross switcher if there's only 1 Pokemon on the field on your opponent's side. So I think Piper, somebody did this to Isaac. I can't remember if it was Piper or not, or if this was just another Mew matchup sometime in the round. But I remember they had like 3 cross switchers in their hand, but there was only 1 Pokemon on the opposing side of the field. So that clogged up their hand, couldn't use Fusion Strike system.
I don't know if this is, I do remember that against the, what is it, the Stonejourner deck.
Yes,
it was
that's
Mew,
what it was.
Yeah, it was a Mew VMAX player against Stonejourner, which also absolutely wild deck. That player, he had to have a Judge Ball, which is basically a mulligan where the you've mulliganed so many times that a judge comes over and just flips the top of your deck until they hit a basic, and then calls it, and then gives you 6 cards after they shuffle and says, "Okay, now start." Which wild ruling.
There is a video on Twitter, so I highly suggest looking at it because it's awesome.
Yeah,
very, very cool.
But I know I'm also checking the time, Jake, and I want to get through to some Singapore stuff and then the other stuff. So
I will say in Bilbao,
yes.
however you say it, I will say in the top 8 there was 2 Mew Genesect decks. There were 3 Palkia and Teleon, so Palkia doing much better in this event compared to Baltimore. There was a Reggie in there in that top 5, so good for Reggie. And then Flying Pikachu staying alive as well in that top 4, getting 4th place. Yes, Flying Pikachu VMAX still around. Cool deck. There was also Stonejourner at Bilbao that made the top 20. So Stonejourner getting a little bit of love across the pond, I will say. And not really, though, I will say Charizard and Teleon, only 2 of them in the top 33, I believe, if my quick math is correct. So, much different than the 2 in the top 8 of Baltimore. But Sean, let's spend a little bit more time. Sneak peek. We've talked about a couple of the decks in Lost Origin last week, some of the ones that we've seen, but there was an actual event in Singapore, a regional of Lost Origin. So Sean, what deck do you want to talk about in here?
There's a couple. I think one that I think is useful is just very quickly looking at the single prize deck format. So technically it's not only single prize decks because there's 3 Pokemon Vs, but if you cross your fingers and hope you don't start one of them, you can definitely go with a single prize strategy.
I will say that those single prize Pokemon are more often than not going to come into the game compared to a lot of the single prizes that you see in here.
Exactly. So this one takes advantage of that Lost engine, the Lost Zone engine. You've got 4 Comfies, which I'm going to say this now. It looks like the Lost Zone engine is going to be a very powerful tool in the next, at least for the next set. I don't know how long, but at least for one set. So if you can get your play set of Comfy sooner rather than later, I would highly recommend that, because I believe is it a rare or is it an uncommon? It is a rare. So it could become an expensive rare. It's already trending at like $2 for
a TCG player.
Yeah. So if you did pull any, if you find some, hold on to them if this is a style that you want to play. Anyways, you got Comfy, and then the main attackers, which we did talk about a little bit last week, which is Cramorant, which it lets you attack for free if you have a certain number of cards in the Lost Zone.
Or more.
Or more, yes, 4 or more. Or you have Sableye, which if you have 10 or more, you get to spread 12 damage counters for 1 energy. Both of which are
You get to spread 12 damage counters if you have 10 or more cards in the Lost Zone.
And so both of those super powerful. You obviously have Radiant Greninja to draw through your deck a little bit. You've got Snorlax to sort of prevent opposing Sableye, I believe, and some other things. But in terms of the 2 prizers, they do have a couple of things in here. We have a Lumineon here, just if you really need to find your probably Colress Experiment in order to get more cards in the Lost Zone. You do have 1 Drapion V, which is the Mew killer, right? If there is a Mew VMAX on the field with like a full bench, I believe Drapion attacks for free, is it?
With darkness, yes.
Yes. And it hits for exactly the amount to knock out a Mew VMAX.
Well, it hits for way more than that. It's 190 base without the weakness. So it can knock out a Genesect without weakness or modifiers.
It's stupid. It's a dumb single card that kills a whole deck, but fine.
I mean, it has the possibility to kill a whole deck. I don't know. We say that it's the Mew killer. I don't know if it's that easy, but it's a helpful card in that matchup.
And then the weird one is 1 Crabominable V, which does a lot of damage based on the number of damage counters. So this one is interesting. I think if you are playing against a deck, like maybe like a Stonejourner, right? Or one of those big Mew VMAX decks that you don't really have the weakness set up with, you can do a little bit of setup damage with your Cramorant maybe, or spreading some damage around with that Sableye, and then come in a little bit later, power the Crabominable V up with your Mirage Gate and 1 Water Energy from hand, and then, do crazy damage out of nowhere.
Crabominable is also very efficient in things like control matchups or stall matchups, right? Because those games last a long time, and, usually it's one person decks out the other first, but trigger Avalanche, for 1 Water Energy, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. You can really accelerate those things. And even if, it's against maybe a Mew deck, right? Mew draws really fast. Mew draws really, really strong. And, more than likely, they got to take 5-6 knockouts to win a game. So if they draw super aggressively and you notice at the end of the game, they only have 2 cards left in their deck.
Yeah.
Slap that Crabominable down, get him in the active, and boom, you've just won the game before they've taken the prize. So it's a good finisher Pokemon for a lot of decks that just draw super aggressively.
Yeah, I love that. I love that call out, Jake. So anyways, really cool preview. I think you're going to see a lot of this type of deck, this Cramorant, Sableye sort of combo-y deck.
Oh, yeah, it is super popular. I think it's pretty good as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we talked about it last week. If you want the starting list and whatnot, or go to Limitless to find the list that won this regional.
A couple of other things. A Mew VMAX did make top 8 at the Singapore Regional, 130 players for reference of size.
I will say the Mew VMAX was pretty much the one that we talked about, this Pokestop London variant. This one, though, a little bit different. It's playing a Cheryl, right, to heal off some of the damage, playing a 1 of Cheryl, but also playing a 1 of Lost City in this list. So the Pokemon that, maybe Radiant Charizard, right? Maybe they were thinking of a Radiant Charizard deck, putting that Lost City and taking that knockout on that Charizard and saying, bye-bye, see you later. Because if you don't know what Lost City is, if you didn't hear on our set review episode of the podcast, Lost City is a stadium whenever a Pokemon, either yours or your opponent's, is knocked out, put that Pokemon in the Lost Zone instead of the discard pile. So, and discard all the attached cards, but you're getting that Pokemon in there to the point of no return.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Like when you have like a Radiant Pokemon, you can only have 1 of, and it's like, oh shoot, my deck revolves around that. Scoop.
See you later. Bye-bye. Have a good day. So this, I really think that this is what Mews can do. I think you're going to see a lot of Mew players doing this personally. Because that's super strong.
Yeah.
Even if it's something like an Inteleon you're knocking out, or like an Arceus V-Star or something like that. Ordinary Rod is good in the format, especially with those single prize decks, the Sableyes, the Cramorants, right? They're going to be good those are going to be good decks. And so they're not playing 4 ofs, right? They're only playing 2s if you saw earlier, or if you're listening, I don't think you may have known, but We're telling you right now, the Sableyes and Kramers were 2 ofs in the deck. So if you could just get rid of one of them, maybe the other one's in the prizes, or maybe it's just difficult to be able to ordinary rot it back in, quick ball to go get it and then put it down. That it takes more combos to make that deck more effective. And so I think it's something that you might see as a tech in a lot of like multi-prize decks that are afraid of the one prize matchup of like Radiant Charizard.
Yeah. It could be very, very interesting.
Especially maybe like Inteleon engine decks, right? Like if Palkia, right? If Palkia sticks to playing the Inteleon engine, because that's a trainer card. It's really easy to get.
Yeah. No, I think Lost City could be a really interesting card for people to play around with. I think you're right, because, very few decks are playing the full 4/4 line of anything. So if all you need is to really, you don't need to win the game by taking all the prizes. If you could win the game just by getting rid of their 2/2 line.
Yeah, I mean, if you do that, if you do that or get rid of the Radiant Charizard, you pretty much win the game, right, in that matchup.
So it's definitely spicy. That's spicy, Jake.
It'll be. It's a really cool tech card that I see. That's why it's cool to talk about this event too.
The other deck that I think people, have been rumbling about this deck. I think you and I, when we talked about it, we were like, "Hey, this is just better Lapras V Max." And you're seeing a bit of the fruits of that labor, which is Kyurem V Max being the new partner for Palkia. And for those of you who don't remember, we'll say it again. Kyurem VMAX has the ability, once during your turn, you may discard the top card of your deck, and if that card is a water energy, attach it to one of your Pokemon. Doesn't tell you which. It's great
Any
acceleration.
Pokemon.
Yes. And so, you could attach it to itself or whatever, and you can use the Oranguru to stack your deck if you need. But the ability, the attack, Max Frost, you may discard any amount of water energy from this Pokemon, so it does have to be on him, to do 50 more damage for each energy card for each card you discard this way, and it's a 120 plus. So you discard 3 water energy, which is the basic attack cost. You're doing 270. You discard 1 more, and you're doing 320, which is going to knock out effectively almost any Pokemon in the format, except a 330 VMAX in response. So you combo that with the 2 prize math of Palkia, with some Radiant Greninja.
Which is already a strong Pokemon since people are filling their benches like crazy in these formats right now. So,
yep.
Just another option.
Yeah, you got Radiant Greninja. You got that Drapion. You even got Empoleon V in here, which is there to be this annoying, I'm going to turn off your Inteleon engine kind of thing.
I'm going to turn off your Inteleon engine. I hate all Reggie decks.
Yep. So definitely a cool deck to consider. Jake, is there any other deck that you wanted to quickly talk about from Singapore?
Not really, because there is a Giratina list, but looking at the Giratina list, it's not anything super crazy from what we talked about the other week. The only thing is the Thornton, choose a basic Pokemon in your discard pile and switch it with one of your basic Pokemon and play any cards attached, damage counter, special condition, turns and play, and other effects remain on the new Pokemon. Basically the Ninja Boy, right? The old Ninja Boy. So if you really want to see that list or hear us talk about, the Giratina Lost Origin list, just listen to our previous episode talking about, the new Lost Origin decks, because this is pretty much the same. There's a couple cards that are different, but not anything too crazy that changes the deck in itself.
So, lots of really interesting results. And I think now, with all of these tournaments sort of on the horizon, Jake, I think it's important that we talk about something. I mentioned this topic to Jake a little bit, and it made him a little squeamish. So I will preface all of that. But
it's not my favorite thing to talk about.
Yeah. But I think Baltimore Regionals sort of, if you are on Twitter or in Burbank, you know a lot of the things that happened. But overall, I personally wanted to talk about some of the systemic issues that official events are facing. And, I might not have the right answer for what Pokemon needs to do to fix it, but I do think they're problems that need to be considered and addressed in a clear manner by Pokemon, is what I'll say. I'm being very vague, but what we saw at Baltimore, there was 2 instances on stream of, at a minimum, misplays. I'm not going to assume necessarily anything off the top. So
we're not the judge, juries, or executioners.
We are not the judge.
We're just the messengers.
But the first that I'm going to talk about, which is the most likely, I think, to be just a misplay, because I think anybody who's played the game long enough has had this happen to them. It is the 2-supporter turn from a Mew VMAX player. I'm just playing the video on silent here for those of you watching, but just to quickly describe it, the player here, he plays a Silene, which lets you get 2 cards, I believe. Is there 2 items?
You roll 2 dice, and for each heads, you get a card from your discard pile to put on the top of your deck.
Yeah. He rolls 2 tails, and afterwards it's like, okay, well, that's not great. He uses a Genesect ability.
Plays a tablet.
Yeah, plays a tablet before that, but not a lot happens. Shuffles up a little bit.
Just a lot of thinking. A lot of thinking happening.
A lot of thinking, and then plays a boss. So obviously, this is one where, like, in a high-stress situation, especially with a Silene that got you nothing back, nothing really changed in your board state or your hand, one can imagine, like, hey, that's something you can forget. And the judges didn't catch this either. So I think as a standalone incident, I would argue that, like, you let this go. But there have been a lot of games on stream where it might be one thing if the players don't catch, a misplay like this. But if you have multiple judges at a table, the fact that it happens on stream, in my opinion, as frequently as it does, is just odd to me. But that's like one issue. Like, I don't know what you can do to penalize anything or make adjustments after this game is played out, because it's like you can't prove any sort of level of intent. It's just an unfortunate thing that sometimes happens. Now, I'm talking a lot. Jake, what do you have anything?
I'm not going to sit here and say that I've never accidentally played a second supporter in a game.
Yeah.
On stream, high intense situation, you're on a stream, you're on the top stage of the regional, which is a 1,000-person event. You're on a stream, which is over 1,500 people watching. As a player, as an opponent, as a judge, like, I'm sweating.
Yeah.
Like, it is nerve-wracking. There is a lot going on and a lot to think about, and you're trying to also win the game. And so I get it. And I mean, like you said, the only person that knows the intention is the player. Whether it was an accident, whether it was on purpose. I'm not here to be the judge, jury, executioner, but I will say I'm not a perfect human being.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say about that.
So the second one is from a player who we've had on the pod before, Isaiah Bradner. I will say, from his time on the pod, wonderful human. Love talking to him. Super, super kind, super smart. So we are, like probably many creators and other, figures in the Pokemon community, we are probably biased towards believing Isaiah just made a mistake, or, so I will preface that bias exists. But
yes,
what happens here is he plays an Irida, which he got off of a Drizzile, looks through his deck, and then the 2 cards he chooses are a Cross Switcher and then a Quick Ball. Now, the strange thing about these 2 that he chose, I'm going to pause it there. The casters, which I think Chip was one of them, Trainer Chip, immediately was like, well, he can't get those 2 cards. He has to get a water Pokemon with that. So let's see if they catch this, et cetera, et cetera. And
I think also, if you could pause the video real quick.
Yeah.
I think he's also, like, thinking about what he wants. And so in this situation, before, we really get into the nitty gritty of the problem, he's considering, there are these 2 item cards that I'm considering getting. And so I'm thinking about if I want them or not. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. And so, like, he grabs these 2 cards. It could honestly be a mistake. A lot of people pointed out he could have easily grabbed a Drizzile, which would have been in the deck with the Irida, drizziled.
Might have just been going too fast.
Yeah, and then like so his brain skipped a step and he didn't grab the drizzile and instead he grabbed the item he would have grabbed with the drizzile. I think that is like perfectly logical, right? So the play continues. He immediately uses the quick ball. And then Xander, though, what's interesting here, Xander actually asks, oh, wait, did I see something right? Like, what cards did you get with the Arita? So Xander is explicitly asking about the last play that was made in the game, which is what cards did you get? After Isaiah plays the quick ball he just grabbed. And he looks through the discard. And I think this is where, for me, the problem becomes maybe more of a question of like, it may not have been cheating to start with, but there may be a situation where a player might be covering up what they are concerned might lead to a prize penalty, right? Because that's a serious thing. Like, you know, if you get a prize penalty at this level of the game, you know, it could be the difference between you making day 2 or not. So Isaiah, when asked, shows the cross switcher that he did get and a Palkia V-Star that was already in his hand. Now, as we've said several times, we cannot know what was going through anyone's mind. Intent is essentially impossible to prove in many instances, but the number of game actions and time that have passed between the Irida and revealing the Palkia V-Star is like 5 seconds and 1 game action.
And it's kind of the same it's kind of, you know, the same situation as like the double supporter that we talked about earlier. You know, it's just there's not a lot of time that happens, and so people are a little fishy about it.
Yeah, and look, I don't think I'll give you my opinion. I am choosing, honestly, to believe that Isaiah did not mean to grab 2 item cards. I think he literally just, his brain skipped the drizzile. I would not be surprised, though, if when challenged on this, the immediate belief was like, oh, well, if I get caught out on this, I'll get a prize penalty. That could have resulted in me losing this game, which was tied 1-1 late in the game. And it may have been a slip of judgment to just show the 1 water Pokemon he did have in hand. That is a specific, like, my belief. The problem that I have that's systemic is, like, Xander clearly was, like, asking what the game state was. And the fact that still the casters on stream who knew that something had happened have no way of giving information to the judging panel, have no way of giving...
At least immediately.
Yeah, you know even...
There could be a person, one of the stream directors or whatever, that runs to the table and be like, hey...
Yep. Because, like, it's one of those instances where, like, I don't think it's appropriate for commentators to be backseat judges. I agree with that. Like, that, it's very complicated the day of. Commentators don't need to be worried about judging effectively. That's not their job. However, it's a very obvious mistake, and, like...
And that defeats a board state, right?
Yeah.
Like, some board states are repairable. Like, there's a certain point, especially if this game continues on, like... Yeah. 20 or 30 actions, like it becomes irreversible. It becomes irreversible. That's the word that I couldn't get out.
And look, a lot of people would say, you know, why would Isaiah do this on stream? Xander is a good friend of Isaiah's. Also, they could argue like it wouldn't have mattered in this game. There's only a couple minutes left, and they're probably going to tie. All of that is true, but the broader problem is like this seems like such an easy thing to not have a problem about, and it's just wild to me that there continue to be like I feel like every time there's a big event, there's at least 1 or 2 games on stream where something like this happens, and there's just like no way for it to be fixed or judges. And so like especially in a game where you have players like, and I'm going to call out a name here, players like Zach Cooper, who have been, you know, not just accused but like have been caught cheating on multiple occasions and are still allowed to compete competitively, which is a problem in the community. So you already have a situation where like this game tends to have a problem of like favoring top players, not punishing people appropriately for cheating. Like you might get into a scenario one day where people start to question the legitimacy or credibility of competitive play. And I don't think anybody wants that.
I do know. I mean, I don't really have an opinion because, like Sean said at the beginning, we have a lot of bias, and I take bias into that account. So that's why I don't think that I can form a legitimate opinion, really. But I know that Diego Casiraga, I don't know how to say his last name, but very, very influential player from Argentina, one of the best players ever to play the Pokemon TCG, especially in the modern America. But he tweeted that I think has a legitimate case of, I saw the video of Isaiah. I'm sure it's an involuntary error. It's not a cheat. But if this was done by a player from Latin America, Brazil, for example, the posts and witch hunts would be infinite, the double standards.
Yeah. I fully agree. I think that, like, because Isaiah is both well-known and well-liked in the community, a lot of the community does come to his defense. And I would say that, like, as a broad statement, I think people should be kind to people in general. So I don't want to discourage that kind of mentality.
Well, I think it not only is that, but it's also, the judges and stuff. I think the first reach that it goes to is the community, but the officiating as well. But
so anyways, like, look, what I would want from Isaiah, like, if it were me, I'm sure Isaiah has heard about all of this, and I would have loved Isaiah to just come out and be like, it was a brain fart or whatever. But at this point, I think there's, like, he can't say anything at this point and not have people questioning him. So, like, it's a lose-lose.
I'm going to worry about my full-time job and not lose my health insurance.
Fair.
But I will say that Pokemon needs to change up their events, because I saw several issues regarding playmats. They did not have enough playmats for everybody. They did not have enough Colress regional promos. And also, in the $70 registration, 70, that's 70, right, to register and go 03 drop, Yep. There was a perk for signing up and getting the stuff, as you get a $20, I believe it was an Ultra Pro like ticket or something, or pass. Like, you got $20 off a purchase of Ultra Pro or whatever it was at the event.
Yeah.
Instead of the $20 off, they gave like a 15% off discount, which I don't know the math, but you got to spend a chunk of money to get $20 off with 15% discounts. So falsely advertising, right? The Pokemon Company, we've said this on the podcast before, the Pokemon Company using the small indie company that is the Pokemon Company, using these small organizers and they're advertising registration off a 100 follower Twitter account. It's just,
that was like,
it's not the best regional to start off 2023.
Like,
even if there was the most players ever at a modern regional, even if a really cool deck won, even if a young player like Piper won.
Yeah, like, I'm just like,
speaking of which, shout out to the females in the game.
Woo.
You got a huge win this weekend.
But yeah, I will say, like,
minority community.
If I bought a 70, like a ticket, a registration, not even like a special ticket, just a normal registration, and I went there for $70, and I was like, hey, where's that awesome Giratina playmat? I'm so excited to get it. And they were like, oh, we don't have that. We have this other mat for you. I'd be like, excuse me?
I'm pissed. I'm Karening.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, that's absurd. And, like, I get
it's $70 on top of your, whatever it is for a hotel, whatever it is for the food, whatever it is for your flight, gas, whatever.
Yeah. Look, it's already super expensive to do this. The $70 is higher than it's ever been. So, like, yes, is the playmat alone going to make up for the cost? No, but it's like, it's a bit of like a soothing balm, right? Of like, well, at least you got a cool
Sean, how much does it cost to make a playmat?
Well, if they're buying them in the bulk that they're buying them, it's probably going to be between $8 to $12 a mat.
Yeah,
it's not expensive.
And I'm sure, and that's just buying the mat. That's not producing the mat. Yeah. Right, which I'm sure is infinitely cheaper. It's like, super cheap.
The main thing for me is, like, look, if I was surprised that this regional was as soon as it was over Worlds. Because, like,
I agree.
They were like, oh, we're going to start the 2023 season. Here's the list. And the first regional is in like 2.5 or 3 weeks or whatever. And it was like, that's pretty wild. So it may have been that there genuinely was not enough time to print the volume of that mat that they needed. It may have been the case. However, that does not excuse you not taking people's information and sending them a mat after the fact.
No, like, so I basically do event management for a living, right? That's like part of my job. That's part of my full-time job. We have had events where we've had to move to another location, whether that be weather, whether that be construction, things like that. Even if it's like a last second move, you have to be prepared for it. Like, it's frustrating to hear about, especially when my job is stuff like that. Like, it's so frustrating to hear that they didn't have enough mats, or they did. It would be different if they said like events while supplies last.
I mean,
right? Then I wouldn't be mad.
They did have that at the bottom while supplies last. However, that is like legalese nonsense. When people sign up, they expect to get these things.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like they're advertising the first 700 people to check in to the event.
No. So, Jake, that was a lot of like Debbie Downer stuff, but you know what's super exciting? That was a lot of bad,
so I'm going to talk about a lot of good right here if you leave a comment on our YouTube video. So I opened up a Lost Origin box recently, and to be honest, like with my job, you know, I barely have time to do the podcast. I don't have time to play PTCGO. So I thought, why not give 36 Lost Origin codes to people in chat? So leave a YouTube comment, and while supplies last, I'll give you a code.
We're not charging you $70 for this code.
I'm not going to charge you $70, and I only have 36. So if you're one of the first 36 people that comment a YouTube video, I'll figure out a way to get you a code. I'll do it random. You know, I don't know if I'll give you a white code or a green code or whatever, but use it to trade, use it to open, like all that stuff. If you're coming over from YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube. Anyways.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the podcast that revolves around the evolving meta, whether it's for the bad, the good, or the ugly. I said that in a different order. Anyways, I'm really tired. I gotta go to bed. It's my birthday. Have a great rest of the day.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, happy birthday. Jesus, I didn't know. All right. Birthdays pod. Bye.
Bye.